Welcome back to CashFlow and Chill, the podcast where we talk about the grind, the hustle, and the journey from underdog to go-getter. If you've ever felt like you've started from nothing or the odds are stacked against you, this episode's for you. We're here for the dreamers, the people who've made mistakes but haven't been defined by them, the ones who are still building, still learning, and pushing to make it happen. In this episode, we'll dive into the real stories of transformation and growth. Because it's not about where you start, but where you end up. And trust me, we've got an incredible story for you today. Today, I've got my man Matt, my co host, with me, and you're going to hear a story that a lot of people can relate to, coming from the streets, a background of struggles, and facing the consequences of some bad decisions. But Matt did not let that define him. Instead, he used it as fuel to his transformation. From a troubled past to becoming a father and stepping into the world of entrepreneurship, Matt is the perfect example of resilience, hard work, and what a shift in a mindset can do to turn your whole life around. He's now a serious entrepreneur building businesses, investing, and most importantly, learning how to create a legacy that lasts. So sit tight, guys, and get ready to hear how one man's journey from bad kid to boss could change your whole perspective. Matt, I'm excited to hear this, and it's such an honor for you to even share all this with us. I know it's like personal and vulnerable and all that, but a lot of people are going to relate to this, so I'm excited to hear it.
Thanks. Yeah. It's something that I've always wanted to do. A lot of people have been pushing me to really get my story out there. So I'm just, grateful to have a platform to be able to share my story, share my journey, the ups, the downs, and everything in between. So appreciate the awesome intro. And yeah, and look, if you guys came here to hear another polished success story where everything went perfect and the credit score was 750 since birth, this ain't that. Today I'm sharing my story and it's raw, it's unfiltered. I'm not holding anything back, from broken to building, from multiple felonies to creating jobs. I've done it all. And I just want to share my story and hopefully it could resonate with somebody and really empower you. If you've ever felt like, you were too far gone to come back, I'm living proof that you're not. So I'm excited to share my story and, hopefully it resonates with somebody.
Absolutely. I think, it's going to touch so many different people, and I think it'll be the perfect example of not to use your past as excuses. Like I still don't know everything about you, but like the little that I do know, it's like more people need to hear this. So, how about you take us back to like your childhood? Like, what was it like growing up, and like, how did that kind of shape you into who you are today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So taking it all the way back, from diapers and baby bottles, I grew up in poverty. I was born in Glendale Heights, Illinois, just in the hospital. I didn't live there. My family was really down on their luck. My parents were drug addicts, addicted to crack and heroin, and I think that they struggled also with alcoholism. So yeah, man, we just really kind of lived on the streets of Chicago, lived in cars, lived in homeless shelters, women abuse shelters, all that stuff. I'm just surrounded by poverty. I saw despair every day and people struggling to eat, lights getting shut off, just really a lot of struggle going on,
Right. So like growing up watching that go on with your parents, like can you remember like what was kind of going through your mind at that time? Do you still like see it, or like like cuz you can kind of like get like glimpse of your childhood, right? Like do you remember that like specifically? Was there times of like uncertainty going through your mind, or like what? Like walk me through that.
Yeah, so I do remember like just key little things growing up. Obviously that was such a long time ago cuz I'm 37 now, but there is key moments that I do remember. I remember sleeping in the vehicles. I remember, my dad would walk around with us and kind of like hustle people. Like he'd go door to door talking about, like the car had broke down and his family just needed a ride. If they could just please give him some money, he could fix the part on his car. He would send it back. And like he literally raised all the money to, some nights get us hotels, at least to provide for his drug habit that day and kind of give us a meal or something. So, I mean, he was out there hustling, so I got to see that. I got to
Right.
see, my parents deal with their demons. And honestly, I was living in the hood and, on the streets and stuff. So there was so many other people around me that were going through the same thing. I honestly just thought it was normal. Like we didn't ever see any like rich, wealthy people or were exposed to that kind of stuff. So I just thought, hey, this is what life was. I really didn't have anything to compare it to.
And do you feel like that kind of shaped like your choices as you became older? And at what age did you first get in trouble with the law? How old were you?
I was 12 years old when I really started kind of like diving deep, and really getting into trouble and going to jail was 12 years old.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's what, seventh grade?
I was in sixth grade at the time. Yeah.
Like that's what you kind of are a project of what you grow up around, until something shifts. So, like, was there a like from 12 years old, like how often were you in trouble or like what, like kind of walk me through that?
Okay. Yeah. So 12 years old, I was where really kind of started. At 12 years old, I broke into an ATM machine, and
Before
I
you
was
go
like,
there, hold on. Did you feel like you had to do that for your parents? Like, did you feel like you needed to provide for them then? Or like what made you think to break into an ATM machine at 12?
honestly, I was just bored as hell, and I was just dumb. I thought I was on some Ocean's 11 type stuff. I was just trying to get some money. I seen an ATM. I thought it was going to be real easy. I had a little ice pick and a screwdriver with me. So I said, hey, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, I was so oblivious and such a bad criminal that I didn't even realize that there was a camera on the ATM. So I just thought like,
Well,
hey,
you're
I can just break
12.
into this and nobody would ever know.
You were 12. Like, what did you really know?
Right, exactly. I mean, the
Yeah.
movies make it seem so easy. So, there was people around me that had it worse than me, and but one thing was I never really grew up wanting to be rich. I just knew one thing that I didn't want to be poor.
Yeah.
And, where I grew up, there was really no businessman coming to career day. Nobody was talking about ownership or investments or credit or, getting rich. I looked up to the rappers, the hustlers, the drug dealers. They had the money, the clothes, the cars, the attention, and honestly, they were the only people actually talking about the life that I was actually living. I couldn't relate to like country music or rock. Rap was really the only thing that kind of spoke my language and was talking about the struggles that I was going through, the things that I was seeing, the environment that I was being raised in. So, and at the same time, I was dealing with physical and emotional abuse, mostly from the men in and out of my mom's life. And,
Mm.
I won't go too deep there, but just know that, that trauma shaped how I viewed myself, and others and truly survival.
That's unfortunate because that can really cause like major trauma and affect how some people take it and block it out, and some people block it out, and then deep down they what they're choosing to do in life, it's there somewhere. So like at what point in your life did you like start getting in trouble and just kind of being a criminal?
Well, I started pretty early. My first arrest was at 12 years old back in
Wow.
1999. And what happened was I broke into an ATM machine, you know, thought I was on some like Ocean's 11 type stuff, but actually I was just broke kid trying to get some money. I had a screwdriver and ice pick, tried to break in there, didn't get anything, and ended up getting arrested and going to the detention center.
You
So
by yourself, or you had like friends with you? Like who even gave you, just came up with that on your own, or
yeah. So ironically enough, it was me and my cousin. And he's a very similar age. And, my mom and his mom are twin sisters. So, you
okay.
know, we spent a lot of time living with them on and off and stuff like that. So he was more like a brother to me because we were similar age, similar backgrounds, stuff like that. So, we really connected and hung out a lot. So we were just walking one night super bored. I happened to have this little, the screwdriver and stuff on me. We walked by the ATM and, how innocent and naive I was at the time. I didn't even realize that there was cameras on ATMs. So like I thought we can just literally break into this thing and get away scot free. The
Great.
way that we got caught, honestly, was that there was a janitor inside the bank and we were unaware of. So this big van comes like speeding up to us like at this ATM machine. And we thought it was like a chomo or like like a child molester. We're like, oh shit,
Yeah.
So we took off running. I hid behind an air conditioning unit. My cousin kept running, the band kept chasing him, and it slammed on the brakes, and I heard like some sounds. I thought like the guy was like trying to kidnap my cousin, so I like peeked out of my hiding spot, and right as I did, the police rolled up in the alley and seen me come out of my hiding spot. So
You got
got
caught
caught.
today because you were on camera.
Yeah, exactly. I like to think that I was slick and I got away and pulled the ultimate escape, but
Yeah.
yeah, you're absolutely right. I would have got busted either way.
So you went to the detention home, and then after that, like what happened? from there?
Yeah, so I went to the detention center and then they ended up, so once I turned 13, they commuted me to like juvenile prison, like, cause you couldn't go till you're 13. So then I went to the Department of Corrections for Children for a few months on a court evaluation, and then I ended up getting out. I was still on probation, or I was on parole at the time actually.
At 12,
And
or I'm sorry, you
but
were 13 on parole. Or how old were you when you got out for that?
yeah, I was 13. Yep. So I
Um,
went in at 13 and I only did a couple months. It was like a 3 month, 90-day court eval. So then I got out after those 90 days that I had done, and they released me back to, try to be a better member of society.
and that didn't happen, right? You didn't learn your lesson there, I'm assuming.
No, unfortunately not. I was a little hard headed, and honestly, just being completely transparent, jail really didn't scare me. Because at home I didn't really have anything. I didn't have any structure. My mom could barely pay the bills. She was struggling her butt off. So I had 3 meals a day, a bed, like clothes. I even had friends in there. So honestly, it was more stable than a home. And I know it's sad, but I mean, that was honestly how I felt. So it really wasn't something that like scared me or like made me think twice before I did things. I just kind of did things. And if I got locked up, oh well.
Right. No fear almost. Which kind of,
Yeah.
if you think about it in terms of being an entrepreneur, right? You can't have much fear to do what you do now. So it kind of makes sense, right?
Right.
So after that, you get out. Like, how many more times were you in trouble since then?
So between the times, before, I mean, between the ages of like 12 and like 21, I had probably, been back and forth. Like, I know that I've been to the detention center 6 times, and then
Wow.
I had been to the juvenile penitentiary 4 times. And then as an adult, I went to the penitentiary twice. One time when I was 17, and then the other time was about 12 years ago was my last time.
Wow.
Yeah. So I did some crazy stuff, into my mindset of not really having that fear of getting locked up really kind of kept me in that cycle, just in and out again and again, on probation and parole and fights and stealing,
Yeah.
you name it. Honestly, I stole a lot out of necessity because my mom didn't have, she didn't have any way to buy me new clothes or school supplies even or anything. Like, she was struggling enough just to kind of keep the lights on and keep some food in the house, and we had to use the food pantry and food drives and stuff like that to really kind of get stuff. And on Christmas, it was all like, handouts from the, like toy drives and stuff like that. So we were struggling pretty good,
Was
and
it just you, or did you have siblings, like just you and your mom? And you said, and where was your father?
so my dad was in and out of the penitentiary his whole life. So I would see him in spurts.
Okay.
Like, sometimes if he was out in the summer, I'd go stay with him for a couple months, or here and there I would just see him, but it wasn't like, I never stayed with him longer than a summer. So he was in and out of the penitentiary. It was me and my sister at home. I have some other siblings, but they didn't live with us. It was just pretty much me and my sister, who's about 2 years younger than me. And so we were pretty much going through it together.
Right. So your dad wasn't around too much then.
No. Nope. And when he was, honestly, he had his own demons. He was dealing with his addictions and stuff like that, and just kind of being a career criminal. And so, he was always good to me, but he wasn't so good to my mom. And they had a very volatile relationship and very abusive and stuff like that. So, I did kind of grow up seeing that, seeing the abuse, and not really being able to do anything about it. So yeah, that was my memories of him. But he was always good to me. He was always a good dad, always a loving dad, always, was saying he was proud of me and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. How did they react to, how did your parents react to you getting in trouble at a young age like that?
So my mom was kind of like surprised, but she wasn't panicking. I know she, probably worried about me a lot more, but she kind of just gave me tough love and just said, hey, I'm not going to be out here visiting you and everything like that. And I remember one time when I was real young, I mean, I was 13 years old, and she was like, hey, I'm not coming to visit you anymore. Like, I'm not sending you money. I'm not writing you. Like, you're gonna have to figure this out, and like really learn your lesson. And I thought she was bluffing, and I waited all day for that visit, and she didn't come. And so I
Damn.
was like, oh, you know what? Something came up. So I waited another day and got all dressed up, ready to go, telling everybody I was about to get a visit, and it didn't come. Honestly, that night I cried myself to sleep, and unfortunately, I lost a lot of love for her that day. When she didn't show up and she just kind of left me in there, I just felt abandoned. And then it was at that point where I realized, nobody's coming to save me. It's me and me only. So I went into really survival mode, really starting to learn how to pivot and manipulate the prison system and the justice system, and just kept going in and out, in and out.
Yeah, you just gave me goosebumps when you said, because like you think of like your mom, right? And in the back of your mind, you're like, I, you know, probably am this way from the product of the environment I grew up in. Like mom, like you know,
Right.
and that's I'm as a mother, like I think that no knock at all, right? But like I don't care what my kids do, I'm coming.
Right.
And it's hard because you're young and you feel abandoned.
Yeah.
So like what was like the turning point for you?
Well, honestly, when I was a youth, there really wasn't any kind of turning point, especially after my dad died. I pretty
Okay.
much just kind of like, hey, I just got nothing to lose. I was doing a lot better in the jail than I was outside. And when I was outside, I was just causing havoc, just being a knucklehead. So when I was younger, it really, I really didn't have a lot of turning point. I did have a very scary encounter where it could have really went bad. And I know it's something I shared with you, but I'll share with the viewers just really quick. I ended up stealing a car and it ended up having kids inside, 3 or 5 year old, and didn't know that they were in there until it was too late. Ended up going to a high speed chase, got into a crash, and the judge tried to give me 30 years, tried to charge me as adult. But thanks to a legal loophole, it kept me charged as a juvenile. And that one really could have ended me. I mean, that could have been something that really kind of changed my life for the worse. I mean, if I would have got 30 years at that time, it would have been ugly.
God knew you had a bigger purpose and that you needed to be here. God, thank God nothing happened to the children. And like, thank God that you were charged as a juvenile because you probably would not be sitting here right now with the same story. Do
Oh
you
no.
feel like your mom not coming to see you kind of made you want to be more bad? Or do you think you still would have followed down the same path? Or like, what do you think in that terms?
Honestly, I think I still would have went down the same path because my mindset was that jail wasn't scary. It was more like summer camp to me. And
Yeah,
even though there was crazy situations and I seen a lot of crazy stuff in there, you know, it was the same kind of life that I was living in the streets. I mean, I was hanging out with gangbangers outside, hung out with them inside, stole stuff outside, stole stuff inside. The same things that I was doing in the outside world, I was just doing in there, and I just had a stable living environment.
right.
So I mean, it really wasn't bad to me. I mean, as bad as that sounds, I mean, it really wasn't, I really didn't learn a lesson in there.
Well, think about it. A child that, unstable living, right? You guys don't have, your mom couldn't really keep the lights on, and so you probably didn't have much food. You probably didn't have like clothes. And if you didn't have a house, where were you taking baths and showering and going to school? So it's a weird way to think about it, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Honestly, it's honestly where I had more comfort and stability. So in a weird way, I was getting locked up out of necessity.
And how do
I was
you,
just a bad criminal. I got caught for everything.
was there one time you got away with anything? Or I don't want you to incriminate yourself now, but
Yeah.
did you?
Luckily, the statute of limitations is over with, but I did have a lot of close calls. I did get away with a lot of stuff. I did get caught for a lot of stuff, but I did get away with a lot of stuff. And really, every time I got away with it, I just became a little bit more brazen. Like I was more gutsy. I would push the limit. It ended up becoming like a rush for me. Like, how much can I get away with? What started off as I was just stealing out of necessity was then stealing for like the thrill, not get caught. Because,
Right.
when I was in sixth grade, I had one outfit for the entire year. So, I would skip every other day to make it look like I wasn't wearing the same thing over and over, because, at 12 years old, I'm starting to look at girls and like girls and stuff. And them seeing me in the same outfit, I was like, man, this is horrible. That was really what started my entrepreneur journey. Actually, I started selling candy at school. I always had candy. I mean, I always like go to the gas stations and like dollar stores and stuff and steal candy and pixie sticks and stuff. Well, I learned that the kids would buy it. So I started selling all these pixie sticks like all over the school, like bags and bags and bags, like
Yeah.
making decent money for my age. Um, yeah, it was sweet. And
Man,
it was and then the principal actually shut me down. He shut my business down, told me I couldn't do that. If I got caught selling anymore, then I would be suspended. So then I was just like, well, the only other way I know how to get stuff is I got to take it. So I started, stealing my school supplies, stealing my clothes, my shoes, because my mom could barely keep the lights on. Like, how do I look coming up and asking her for the new Jordans or the new, the South Pole was popular back at that time. And so it was just like, I just had to go get it how I always knew how to get it. And just,
right.
even though it wasn't right, it was my only option really. And
Yep. So like how do you feel like the, like experience with like your criminal escapades, you could call it, like shaped your mindset or like for where you are, like the turning point?
So yeah, honestly, I when I was locked up, I learned a lot of how to talk to people and different kinds of people. Like you had to talk to the COs, you had to talk to the warden, you had to talk to other inmates of all different ethnicities. So I really got really good at talking to people. So I think that that really, really helped me. It made me resilient, it made me strong. And it's also where I really found my love for music.
Mm,
I actually found music as an outlet while I was locked up. I started with poetry, and I was just kind of writing down my story and everything was rhyming and stuff like that. And one day, one of my cellmates, they said, "Bro, this is just rap without a beat. Like, why don't you just start doing music?"
yeah.
And I was just like, "What?" Like, I thought it was just for black people. I never seen any rappers but Vanilla Ice, and they were clowning that man. So I was like, I don't want to be like that.
That's why you're so clever with your words now. Like you can really like the way you talk, it's that gave you like the ability to talk to multiple people to, probably in sales, be good in sales and, all that stuff.
Yeah, I was building the foundation without really knowing it, to be
Yeah.
honest. And yeah, so when I got out, I actually found some guys that were doing music and I started recording and I truly fell in love with it, like the creativity, the release, being on stage, like the feedback, all that cool stuff. So and being that I grew up, idolizing rappers and drug dealers and stuff like that, it really just kind of fit that niche.
Did it stop you getting in trouble? Was that like your outlet to kind of go or like when you were rapping, like what did that look like?
Yeah, so when I was rapping, and honestly, it didn't really do anything for me besides it was like therapeutic. I enjoyed it. It gave me a passion. It gave me something to chase, something to be committed to, like doing these shows, preparing for shows, doing all this stuff. So it really kind of gave me that, that introduction to that as well as business because in the music game, like you got to print up your own CDs, you got to find like album art, you got to sell the mixtapes to try to get some money back. You got to come up with all this money, you got to pay for studio time or build your own studio. So like it really like taught me how to do business.
Right.
So, it was a bad business that I started, but it really kind of gave me the foundations of how to operate, how to save for stuff and things like that. But honestly, it was putting me in rooms that I didn't need to be in. Like there was drugs and there's bad energy and the streets was mixed up in it and a lot of criminals in that realm. So it wasn't the best place that I could have been, but it was something like that outlet that I needed that kind of kept me focused and driven towards a common goal. Before that, I had no goals ever.
Right.
But then I gave me something to work for. Like, man, I want to make it with this, or I want to make a good song, change the energy in the club by making this club banger, or whatever the case may be. So it did help me in some ways, but it also put me in some situations that
Right.
I otherwise wouldn't have been in.
So you kept getting in trouble, I'm assuming, even then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I was in and out still at that point as well. I was still young. It was even before I had my first son. So I got locked up 3 times after I started rapping. So
Okay.
3 times total after that.
So do you think if like you would have had someone to look up to, a role model or someone to like be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" you would have stopped or were you going to do what you wanted to do regardless?
Well, that's a great question. I honestly can't say either way, but at the time, like I really kind of bucked against authority. I had somebody that really kind of stepped in and really helped me. This guy named Frank. He owned a carnival, him and his family, and like it was a small outfit, like bounce houses and stuff like that.
Yep.
And he kind of took me under his wing, and my mom was working for him. Then I came about it. He saved me from going to jail one time.
Wow.
He was an old staff sergeant in the military for 20 years. So he had been used to working with knuckleheads and stuff like myself. And he was just a really good hearted dude, taught me about business just from watching him do it, taught me how to talk to people even more because I was, like working some of the games and stuff at the carnival. So you got to like talk people into it and like being friendly and stuff like that to try to, encourage more people to play and spend more money. So, it really helped me in that regard. And he really looked out for me and taught me a lot of like life lessons. When my dad passed, he was really like the only positive male role model. And I didn't always listen to him. And I kind of, bucked against his advice at times. But looking back at it, like everything he was telling me and trying to show me was all positive stuff like that. And, I do attribute a lot of the great traits that I have now towards the teachings and the kind of man that he was.
Yeah. That's awesome that you had that. So you
Oh,
mentioned
yeah.
that during the rapping phase, you were still getting in trouble, but then you mentioned you had kids. So when you started having kids, did that stop you from getting in trouble?
Well, I want to say yes, but honestly, it didn't. It did slow me down. Like the best thing that ever happened to me was that when my first son was born. But I'd be lying if I said like just overnight it was like, oh man, I got a son and now my whole life has changed. Like I felt a little bit more pressure, to like get money. And I was just like, damn, I can't just be doing, little man bogus and having them grow up like me. I'd work dead end jobs and I would be working for staffing agencies where I'm just on a job for a week or a couple days or a month
Yeah.
here or there, like, so it's very inconsistent, very unstable. And like, I hated working. So I would quit all the time too. So I'm not blaming them. Me and work did not have a good relationship.
Most entrepreneurs, it doesn't. Same with authority. So it all makes sense.
Right, right. Yeah, I was building my entrepreneurial journey and didn't even know it.
It's nice that it went the way it went in a way because you've learned so much and you've been through so much and you can inspire so many people. But imagine if you had a you that and knowing what you know now, right? And just thinking like, man, all these positive traits, like you had good positive traits, right? You just use them incorrectly.
Right. And that's what I always got told by like my teachers, my mom and my parole officers and probation officers. They were always saying, man, you were so smart, but you were just using it for all the wrong things.
Yeah.
So I got that a lot.
I bet, but it still wasn't enough. Did you feel like anything was missing during those years and like in your life or what?
Honestly, and I didn't learn this till later until I unpacked some of like my childhood trauma and stuff like that and events that happened to me. But, honestly, it was me just having a big defense mechanism, like so, everything had kind of led to me to being like trying to be extra masculine, like extra alpha male, like trying to be a tough guy. I'm built heavy off of ego and reputation and pride, so like coming up, in the rap world, male dominant, very aggressive kind of music, aggressive in the penitentiary. It's like survival of the fittest. Like going up in the hood, it's like you're gonna have to be strong, you're gonna have to be able to fight and stuff like that. So it's like I was always like kind of in that mode, like fighting, to cope with that scared little boy that things that happened to, and he just didn't want to get hurt again. Because like I would always be angry and like negative and wanting to fight and just being ready for whatever. And I just never knew why, because in my heart, that wasn't who I was. Like I would get into fights and, like beat people up and stuff and feel bad for it afterwards. Like, damn, that was someone's son. Like I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't have done that extra stuff.
Right.
Like, damn, why did I do that? Like, so I had a good heart, but unfortunately, I was trapped in like own battle against myself where had to be a tough guy. And I was like, man, I ain't showing anybody I got a heart. I ain't showing anybody I'm kind. So I would hide a lot of who I really was to keep this like, this mask on that I was this big tough guy that you shouldn't, mess with.
Wow. How do
Yeah.
you feel like you like broke free from like your past and like what was ultimately like the key and like the steps in that transformation?
So I would say honestly, like the last straw was like really my final time in jail. So obviously I'd been dabbling in stuff like that, and I wasn't working steady jobs, so I'd be like selling weed here and there just to survive. And I wasn't El Chapo or anything, but
Yeah.
I was honestly just trying to make a living and trying to support my family. And I battled with homelessness too when me and my kid's mom had separated. So I was just living rough, doing what I could to survive. My last time that I got locked up, which was I got locked up about 12 years ago. So this is like the longest that I've been without being locked up. So that's awesome. And what happened was I was actually working at a pizza place and I found a loophole to make more money.
Hmm.
And so basically I was stealing from the company and I got caught, you know.
Okay.
So I ended up serving 6 months, but this time was different. This time I actually had children. And it was one of the first times that I've ever like went to jail having kids.
How many kids did you have?
Right. Yeah. So I had two kids. I had two sons, Mark and Mason, my whole world.
Yeah.
And I had them and they were young at the time. I think they were like 4 and 6 or something like that. So they were still pretty young. But I only went away for 6 months. It wasn't anything too crazy.
Right.
But in that time, I remember sitting in the cell and an epiphany happened about 2 months in to my sentence. And I actually remember this clear as day. And I remember sitting in that cell, looking at the pictures and, thinking about, man, are you just going to watch your kids grow up through pictures? Knowing that somebody else is out there with your kid's mom, probably mistreating your kids, mistreating her. And there's no one to blame but yourself, So I just had an epiphany and a mindset shift right there. That's when I really woke up and I said, you know what? the heck with this, man. I need a change. I need to do something different. So the next day, I enrolled in a college class that the prison had offered. It's called Career Technologies. They taught us how to write resumes and budget and apply for jobs and financing and all that kind of stuff, life insurance. So it was my first peek in any of that. I never heard those terms and stuff. Like I knew jobs and stuff like that. But as far as financing and disability insurance and all that stuff, I had no idea what that was, never heard of it. Everybody I knew didn't have insurance or they just had enough to cover the casket, pretty
Yeah.
much. So
So it's almost like when you went into when your kids, because you have kids now, right? First time in jail with kids, and you probably got like a think of your past, right? Your dad's
yeah,
out of prison, your mom has a new, guys in and out, and now you want to protect your kids.
exactly. Yep, 100%. And it just kept giving me those flashbacks to like, my dad and watching him grow up in prison too. I mean, obviously he was an adult, but all I seen is pictures. Then I'd see him and he'd look all different and I'd see him for a little bit and then hey, yeah, dad went back to jail. And so, trying to write him and stuff like that. And I remember at one time me and him were locked up at the same exact time and we were writing each other from penitentiaries and
Wow.
he was so disappointed like he wasn't trying to like hammer in a lesson because obviously he was doing the same thing. So it's like you couldn't really tell me too much, but he was just like, "Son, I'm so sorry. Like I wish this wasn't for you. Like I really wish you would turn your life around. You don't want this life and blah blah blah." So like he was really like he was more genuinely hurt, I think, that I went down the same path. But it wasn't like a lecturing or anything like that. It was just like him expressing like how genuinely it hurt him that I was following in his footsteps.
Right.
So I didn't want that the same for my kids. And I was always a realist. I always blame myself for what happened to me because I knew I did it. I made the conscious decision to do what I did. And, I had to accept the responsibility for it. And, that was one thing that I always had good about my mindset. I never looked around and said, oh, poor me. Like, man, I'm a victim here. Like it was always like, you stepped in another shit pile, Matt.
When you think about it, that also correlates to being a leader and being an entrepreneur. When things go bad, I think you've told me this before. When things go bad, you don't look at the people that you're leading, you look at yourself first. So
Yeah.
be able to take the self auditing of yourself, like, nope, this is my problem. I did this wrong. Let me correct it before I blame other people. So, like, when you got out from that last 6 months, walk us through like how you even got into entrepreneurship? Like, what did you get a job? Like, did you work at McDonald's? Like, what went on?
Okay, so well, it wasn't that simple, and I'll take it back a little bit further just to kind of paint the picture. When I
Yeah.
was when I was going through that career technologies course, I started doing some research, and I was like, "Hey, I need to get out of here. I need to get a good job. That's the only way I'm really going to change my life around." But I didn't want to work a dead end shitty job, So I was looking up like what kind of jobs can you have with multiple felonies that actually pay pretty decent. You can make a good living, and I kept seeing CDL, right? A commercial driver's license, driving semi trucks. So I knew that I knew how to drive. So I knew I'm like, okay, this is something I can get in that would be easy for me, at least, in the technical aspect of it. And if I can make good money with having my record, I mean, it's a win-win.
Right.
And ironically enough, one of my cellmates in there was a general contractor. He actually had his own construction business, but he had a drinking problem. So he
Mhm.
was in there on a DUI, but he was about to get out. I think a month after I was getting out was
Yeah.
he was set for release. So he's like, dude, if you get your CDL, if you're serious about getting it, give me a call and I'll give you a job. You can just drive and haul gravel for me.
Wow.
So I was like, hell yeah, like I was like, man, I finally made it. I'm making a plan to get out of here. Cause all my other plans when I got out was just
Let me
stay
pause.
out as long as possible and enjoy it.
In jail. Like, think about that, because most people will use that as an excuse, but in jail, you are planning, you're networking in jail.
Right. Yeah.
You're like, yeah, just like the no excuse. Like, sorry, I had to comment on that really quick. So I don't know if anyone picked up on that. He's in jail networking with people and figuring out how to make his life better when he gets out instead of thinking, because if I've never had to spend just a little bit of time in jail, like less than 24 hours. But most people are in jail thinking about the crimes they're going to commit when they get out.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that was actually a big mindset shift I had in really one of my other cellies because in my cell there's four people. It was me and three other dudes. So one of the other guys that was in there, we were talking about it, and he was a young guy, from the streets of Chicago. And I would always ask him, like, yo, what's your plan for getting out of here? Because he was there on like his third drug case.
Mhm.
He had like been selling drugs, got caught. Like this is his third time. So he's like, man, as soon as I get out, I'm gonna cop an 8 ball. I'm gonna get back on. My homie's gonna put me on. And I was like, bro, like literally, you've done that like 3 times already. It didn't
That,
work.
that's
Like,
what I'm saying.
also, I just started to see like this is why people keep coming back in and out is because they're not changing. So it really like subconsciously it was like programming, this is not the way, like this is not the way to be successful, this is not the way to live your life. If you keep doing the same things you've been doing, you're going to keep getting the same results you've been getting, you know. So that's what really wanted me to change. Like I never wanted to be a truck driver, but I wanted to make money, and I realized that hey, with a bad criminal record you really can't get too many good jobs, so you better take what you can get.
Exactly. Like you can't be begging and choosing. A lot of people use that as an excuse, to keep doing what they're doing. They're like, oh, I can only get this kind of job. Okay, well, like you were making what, 50 cents in prison? So go make that 10 out in a job and do it legitimately and have some freedom. You got to start somewhere. So the guy said to get your CDL. So when you got out, did you go get your CDL or what happened?
Well, it didn't exactly work like that.
Tell me you got in trouble again.
Oh, well, I didn't get in trouble, thankfully, but I definitely wasn't being innocent, right? So I got out. My first job was I got a job at Olive Garden doing the dishes, and it was horrible. I hated every single day. I had blisters on my feet. My feet were always soaking wet. I literally hated this job, but
Yeah.
I just did it because when you're on parole and stuff, it's like you either get a job or you go back to jail. Like, like you really ain't got no choice. You have to go out there and start doing something. You just can't do anything. So I got this job. I was working on it. I was grateful for the opportunity, but it wasn't for me. It was just something to really satisfy the parole board so they wouldn't violate me again.
Yeah.
And especially having kids at home, and I was like, man, I got to do something. So I worked that job for probably like 9 months, and then I just had enough of it. So unfortunately, I kind of slipped back in my old ways. I started selling weed, was getting a lot more money, was able to do a little bit more things, and kind of kind of get out of my own.
Yeah.
And luckily, I had a really good friend that, you know, he helped me a lot by letting me stay with him, and we were roommates and stuff like that. And I would help contribute around the house, but for the most part, he was holding me down and really just allowing me to kind of get on my feet, and I'm super thankful for him. And but like I said, I was dabbling in the wrong side of things, and then the guy ended up reaching out to me on Facebook, the guy with the CDL opportunity,
Wow.
and he said, "Hey man, did you ever get that CDL?" And I
What
was
excuse
like,
did you give him?
huh?
What excuse did you give him? Let's hear it.
So no, I just told him, no, I haven't got it, man. I just been working and trying to figure it out. And and he was just like, all right, well shit, that job's still on the line. Like, as soon as you get it, let me know. I'll put you to work next day.
Wow.
So now I'm fired up. So now I got this opportunity. This guy just wasn't like jailhouse talking, like he's serious. Like, and I was seeing like videos on his like Facebook and stuff, like him out there working, doing jobs. He was like a concrete guy, worked in the union, and then he had a company on the side that he would do projects. So I was seeing him do the stuff. So I knew he wasn't bullcrapping, and he had a lot of money in it, when we were locked up. So I knew that he had money. And
Right.
so I was like, all right, man, I'm locked in and getting the CDL. So I went to the college to see exactly how I'd go about getting it. I had no idea. And so I go there, find out that they actually have a program that I can get the CDL class paid for, because it was like almost $5,000. It was like
Wow.
4,600 or 4,700 or something. It was like crazy expensive,
Yeah.
especially for me. When you got zero, 4,700 is like 100,000.
Right. Exactly.
I was like, what? How am I gonna come up with that? But luckily they had that program there for like people that were, like broke or under the poverty level or whatever. And so I qualified for it. I got accepted to the program. So I was like super excited. I was like, yes, man, like this is finally like the turning point. Like, this is what I got. This is what's gonna pull me out of like, the easy money and stuff like that, and give me a real career for my kids. So I went to go sign the papers, and right then, and I'm not big into politics, so I don't know exactly what time it was or what was going on specifically. But for some reason, the governor wasn't happy or whatever. So in Illinois, he did a shutdown.
Oh
Well,
my
shut down all like non-necessary programs. So it literally cut my funding like right before, like a month before I was going to start my
God.
CDL course. So I was like, no, like another setback. Like, dang, like what the heck, man? Like every time I try to go legit, some bull crap happens. And so I was like, damn, what am I gonna do? I was just kind of sitting around thinking about it, and then I was just like, you know what? The heck with it. You still got to go do this. Like you're gonna have that job on the other side. This is just an investment. Like go make the money. So I went to this factory, the shitty factory that I was working at, and I worked that job every single day, 12 days, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And it was really, working hard, and it sucked.
Yeah.
But I work until I saved up that money and I paid for it cash.
Wow.
And I did the course, got the CDL, was super excited. A week after I got my license, I went out and reached out to the guy whose name was Eric. And I was like, Eric, man, I got the CDL, man. I'm ready to come start working, man. Like, when can I start? And he's like, man, I got some bad news. And I
Oh,
was like, what? And he said, man, me and my wife are going through it. I'm gonna get a divorce, so I got to liquidate the company so she doesn't take half my stuff. So I'm sorry, but I can't give you the job. I was like, oh my god, bro, I just spent 4,800, bro. Like, man, I just slaved away getting all this money. What do you mean I can't get the job? So, man, I was so defeated. I was like, dang, man, like the world, the universe just want me to be a dirty criminal the rest of my life, man. Every time I try to go legit, they keep knocking me down, man.
oh my
Um,
gosh. I just
so
got
it was,
bumps as you're saying this. Like, keep going. I'm
yeah,
sorry. Yeah.
yeah, it sucked. So I was like defeated. So of course, what I do, go back to what I knew, started selling weed again and doing that stuff.
Why didn't you just go find another job to use your CDL, like right then and there? Like, what made you in your mind be like, I'm just going to go sell weed instead of I'm going to go apply for some jobs for with my CDL?
So yeah, that's a great question. The real reason was because all the opportunities that I was like being presented with or that could have done was like over the road stuff. And I really wanted to be there for my kids. Like that was something that was very important to me, that I
Hmm.
really wanted to see them and be there for them. And so I knew that over the road was going to take me away because my uncle was an over the road truck driver for like 20, 30 years. And like he was gone week at a time, come home for like a day, day and a half, and then he was gone for another week or
Oh,
2 weeks or whatever. So I grew up seeing that my uncle was never around, and I didn't want to, I didn't want to do that either. Like a collection of my life was watching people do things that I didn't want to do in my life.
right.
So I never judged them or anything like that or held any resentment towards anybody, but they showed me what I didn't want to do. I didn't have a lot of examples showing me what to do, but I learned what I didn't want to do. So I was like, nope, I'm not doing that. I'm not committed to going over the road. So, and it's probably just me, just like kind of feeling defeated, man, and wanting to take the easy way out because that
Yeah.
way wasn't working. So, yeah, I just went back to selling the weed and
Did you ever use your CDL license?
yep. So yeah, so that brings me into the next part of my story here is that so as I was selling the weed and stuff like that, if you've ever sold weed or any kind of drugs, I'm not advocating for it, but if you ever have, there's things called routes that happen, right? And where the supply isn't coming in like it used to, is very limited, or the quality is suffering. So it was a lot harder to make these transactions work. So I ended up and it like dwindled down to nothing. So I went and like spent all my reserves, like just trying to survive. At the time, I was like coaching and stuff like that, and working with children and stuff like that. And that was a big, I don't want to just breeze over this because I think coaching really had a huge impact in my life. Like when I first got out of jail, I registered my son for football and got him into sports. And I was coaching, and I was not a great coach. I was just coaching like how I knew, like yelling and cussing and going crazy. But I mean, it was 8 year old, so like I didn't have no business doing
I
that.
remember you ripping Fernando off the field one day. You remember that?
Yeah, I know. I picked him up so we wouldn't get that too many men on the field.
I stood up in the stands. I'm like, what the?
Oh yeah, I remember that. But yeah, I was like, I
F-?
had the right heart for it. Just the way that I was communicating stuff wasn't a good way to be around like the kids and stuff. So what it really made me do is like learn how I talk to kids, learn to identify like how all the different kids learn. Like some can be motivated by yelling at them, some
Yeah.
needed a little bit more nurturing and loving on them. Some like you just had to kind of give them a bunch of attaboys and pat on the backs. So I really kind of learned how to deal with many different kids.
You were a
And then
great.
it made me want to change, because I didn't want to be selling weed and get caught and then like it'd be in the newspaper like, damn, this dude was selling weed. And I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't like moving weight or anything like that. It was simply selling enough to pay my bills this month and get my kids to these football games, these tournaments, invest in like their uniforms and gears and stuff. So I was pretty much living like a double life. And I was going home and I was broke as a joke. Like I couldn't even afford a ramen noodle, like it was bad. And I would save up all my money and I would just act like everything was okay on the outside just because I was like full of shame. At the time, my rent was $375, right? For this
Wow.
3 bedroom that I was living in. And I was 2 months behind on my rent. My power is about to get shut off. Again, I didn't have no food. Like literally, I was on a ramen noodle diet, because that was just the cheapest thing to do. So finally, I just said, you know what, man? I had that same pride that we were just talking about, like not wanting to get that job because I felt like I was worth more. Like,
Yep.
like, well, I just made $1,000 in a couple hours. Why would I go work for $9? Like, no way. So I just had that very like bad mindset. I was just thinking about it all wrong. So one day, just like when I was so broke and about to get kicked out and all this stuff, and I was like, damn, dude, like you're really about to let your family down, man, just because you put all your trust into this, this criminal position here. And so I said, you know what? I understood, obviously, because I was always like had some intelligence about me. I was just using it in the wrong way. So I was like, the best way to get a job is to have one. So I said, I'm just gonna get a job, whatever it is, whoever will accept me. I don't deserve, a lot of money an hour because I got a shady record, criminal and work history. It was horrible. So I was like, I don't deserve 15, 20, $30 an hour. I don't deserve good jobs because I wasn't a good employee. I was like, the heck with it. I'm just gonna have to suck up my pride and do what I gotta do. And I'm just gonna keep applying. So I ended up getting this job. It was like $9 and 9.50 an hour. It was a shitty factory job. Hated it. It was hot, sweaty, and miserable. It was like standing up all day. But what I would do is every day I would fake like going to take a number two, and I would just sit in the stall and I'd be on Indeed just applying like with my resume that
Yeah.
I learned in the joint and saying that I had a CDL, and I was just applying for truck jobs all day long, all day long, all day long. Well, 90 days later, I ended up getting another job. So at that factory job, I was making about 1,200 bucks a month and barely surviving, but it kind of pulled me out of that hole. So I got everything caught up. It really kind of gave me that leg up. And then once I got that trucking job, I mean, it was an instant flip because I went from making 1,200 bucks a month to $1,000 a week,
Oh my
like,
God.
like almost overnight, so it was like, man, it was such a crazy change. Like, it was such a blessing. It was like finally doing the right thing is finally paid off for me.
Right. So people would have stopped there because to a lot of people, they have a good job. They work Monday through Friday, I'm assuming, 9 to 5. You're making 1,000 a week. Like, why didn't you feel content with that?
Um, well, I did for a little bit, honestly.
Okay.
But what really kind of got me really onto the journey owning businesses and real estate and stuff like that was that a couple months in, I had wore out every single playlist I had. I had listened to every CD that I loved. I just went through every single music track because I was working 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. So I was in this truck a lot. And so I started doing research, and I was like, because I wanted to get rich. Like I was like, I had a little piece of having money, and even though $1,000 a week isn't nothing to me, I was like, man, this is the best money I ever made legally, you
Yeah.
know. So I was like, damn, like I want to get rich. Like, how does this happen? So I just started doing research and looking up different rich people and entrepreneurs, and they all had the same common denominator that they all had real estate. Prior to that, my only knowledge about real estate was people get married and they buy a house, or like we rent from people.
Yep.
Anything other than that, I had no clue what it was, how it worked, how you'd make money from it, or anything like that. You knew that those are the only two introductions I ever had with real estate. So I started looking up some podcasts for real estate, and I found this one called Bigger Pockets. And I stumbled across that, and I would just listen to that every single day. And honestly, that's really what made a big pivot in my life, because that podcast was so influential because they had so many people from different walks of life,
Hmm.
shapes, sizes, everything like that, backgrounds. There was teachers on there. There was, people at W-2, janitors. There was so many people from so many different walks of life that were killing it in real estate and in business. So it really gave me that proof of concept, like, damn, like I can actually be successful. Maybe I'm not like going to be uber wealthy or a billionaire or something like that, but damn, if this person can do it, it's like average person, I can definitely do it. So then I just fell down in a rabbit hole, and I just started learning, 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 man. And I ain't gonna lie, I had analysis paralysis. I just learned for like 2 years straight. I ain't do
Yeah.
shit. um, but then it came to a point, and I was like, hey man, it's time to shit or get off the pot, man. Like,
Right.
you keep learning, learning, learning. Well, shit, you ain't never gonna make no money learning. You got to put this shit into action. So start somewhere and just get going. And if you lose, you lose, but you still got a good job. Like, you got something to fall back on. So I ended up saving up 10 grand. We were playing for a football organization that was like up more towards the city in Joliet. And the president of that organization, he used to be a wrestler. My son was a wrestler. So we kind of bonded over that. His name was Frank. And, so we kind of took a liking to each other. We would talk, and I had his number. I'd go to his house a couple of times, and he would put me up on game and like kind of, just kind of walk me through a little bit about business. He could see that I was interested in it, but I really didn't know nothing about it. Just I got really excited about the podcast, and I was learning stuff. So he could tell that I was doing some research. So he was giving me like a little bit of guidance. And so I told him like, hey man, I want to, I really want to do this real estate thing. Like, will you do it with me? And he's like, yeah, man, let's do a flip. So he had a lead on a house. We were going to do the flip. Long story short, the deal fell through. It didn't make sense of the flip. It was more for like a buy and hold scenario, a good location. It was pretty renovated when we seen it. So didn't work out, unfortunately. So I was like, damn, here we go again with this, this legit shit ain't working out. So I was a little bummed out, but being being, in the coaching world, and my buddy Marty, he was there. His son played right alongside my son, where they're on the same team. So I'd see him every day at practice. We'd be talking and just kind of talking about his the problems that he was having. He had just opened a fence and deck business. So he's like, man, I can't manage this. I'm trying to do everything. It's a one man show kind of situation. And I always used to just joke with him and be like, hey, I'll be your secretary. I answer the phone for you, man. Just put me on the payroll. And it was just half heartedly, just kind of joking around and never anything serious. But after that flip didn't work out, Frank had suggested to me, hey, why don't you reach out to Marty? And
Mm,
I said, for what? And he's like, you should try to invest in his business and use that 10 grand for that, and I was like, dude, I don't have no experience. I never built a fence in my life. I've only jumped them, running from the police. Like, I don't know nothing about these things, and definitely about no decks. Never did anything about sales that, were at least legal.
right,
So he told me like, yeah, reach out to him. He needs some help. You're good at talking to people. You got some good organizational qualities and stuff like that. I could tell like from seeing me at practice and coaching and stuff. So he was like, just offer to partner up with him. I was like, man, he ain't gonna do that. So he's like, well, just call him and ask. The worst he could say is no.
right.
And I was like, all right, cool. And half-heartedly, like looking back, I probably wouldn't have called him and asked him, but he was like, call him now. And I was like, oh man, he put me on the spot. So I was like, oh shit, I gotta do it.
Right.
So I called him and we kind of got to talking about it. And yeah, so, you know, long story short, he's like, yeah, man, let's do it. Let's partner up. He gave me 50% of the business. I invested in a truck for the business, as well as like a gas powered concrete mixer and an auger, like a gas powered auger to help like dig things. So it really, my investment wasn't directly straight to Marty. It was more like investing into the business so that it can be more efficient, less stress on their backs and stuff like that. So it would have been a lot more efficient for the business and increase the profit. So I bought in that, got 50%, and then I took over the sales and the operations of the business, and pretty much learned the game on the fly. I think he took me out like 3 days on the sales thing, and then it was just like, good luck. So I was
Hey,
just out there winging it. Like I didn't know what to say. I didn't know all the ins and outs of everything. But honestly, it was just like, hey, that 10,000 that I had, there is no going back. Like that 10,000 is gone. So like I got to make this shit work. No matter what I got to do, no matter what I got to learn, like I just got to dive in. I got to make it work. So that's exactly what I did. I just kept hustling. I kept studying. I kept asking questions. I kept like meeting with him every day. Like, hey, how do I bid this? Or like, what should I look out for? What should I take pictures of? Like, and just really, really, really dove into the business. And then, and then next thing you know, we really blew this thing up. And, so fast forward today, our business is doing $1 million for our third year, and on pace right now to do 3 million this year. We've just been blowing up and really just taking care of people, doing things the right way, structuring everything, constantly learning and implementing new techniques and strategies and operating systems, processes, operationalizing everything, really just kind of learning everything about business. But as I was doing the business, not waiting to till I had all the information and then getting started. I just kind of got started and just learned as I went.
right. So like what was like the biggest challenge you faced as you stepped into business?
I think the biggest challenge was just not knowing anything. Like I didn't know anything about business whatsoever. I knew no business owners prior to that besides like
Yeah.
the carnival Frank, not the football Frank.
But skills that you had through one, like you just went out and did it, right? That was no,
Yeah.
you could pivot. You knew how to pivot as, as you're going through stuff as a child, you're pivoting to this and that and learning how to make it work in the environment you're in. Like all of those skills that you went through and all the troubles and trials and all that stuff built you into who you are today. Because you have to have tough skin, can't be afraid to fail. You know,
Yep.
it all weirdly worked out. So
Yeah.
how many businesses do you have now?
So right now I have a real estate acquisitions business.
Okay.
I have a fence and deck business, which we were just talking about. That's map quality fencing and decks. Then I also have a consulting company called Legacy Consulting Group.
Okay.
And then I also recently just started a funding business where I help people fix and rebuild their credit as well as get access to funding, to like start a new business and stuff like that. So just recently started that. And I've had many businesses in between. A lot of them failed. My first business besides that pixie stick business was I used to sell like knockoff purses. So I used to sell Louis Vuitton and Chanel and Coach and all that stuff. It was like exact replicas from China. So I would sell that. So that worked for a little bit until it didn't. And then I got into once I got into the rapping and stuff like that, and later in my rap career, I ended up starting a clothing line, and it is actually a really good idea, a really good product. But the only thing bad about it was all the money that I made from it, I was still drowning in that apartment that was 375. So all the money that I made profit, I had to sink back in just to stay afloat. So, I had that. Then me and Marty, we started like a picture business for the sports. Like we are going to take sports photos. And yeah, that didn't go as well as planned. It was a good idea, but poor execution. We dove into it not knowing anything about it. And we ended up setting up for the Super Bowl of our kids' 9U Super Bowl run. And let me just tell you that everything could have went wrong. Like the
Really?
power was blowing, the internet connection was horrible. We couldn't load the pictures. The wind was blowing. It blew all our stuff around. Stuff was getting unplugged. I mean, literally everything. I think we sold one or two posters that entire day, and we were out there for like 4.5 hours just because it was horrible.
Yeah.
Um, so we gave that business the axe that day. Like that was our first and last day in business for
And you
that.
still got into the fencing company together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That was kind of like our dating phase. We just knew that we wanted to make money. We wanted to be entrepreneurs. We wanted to make our own money, work for ourselves. We just didn't really know where to do it. And I was still trucking at the time, and he was still just kind of starting the business. So it hadn't even been in the stage where we could have merged up. And it
Right.
was, a couple months later that we actually joined forces on the fence and deck business.
So from the fencing company to all the other businesses, like what made you even want to keep going, or like how did you learn about all that to even build those companies?
Yeah, so I just started reading books. I literally just started gobbling up all the information I could, like podcasts, audiobooks, books, learning how to be an entrepreneur, how to manage money, play the money game, stuff like that. So I really just started investing in self-education. And then I found what I think was by far one of the best decisions I ever made. I found a mentorship. As a real estate mentorship called Sub 2, led by Pace Morby. And it was a creative financing mentorship. So it was a community of people where they teach you how to make money in real estate without using your own money. So it really kind of fit up my alley. Like, hey, new to the game, don't have a lot of money to invest, but I can get into this. But it was a hefty price tag. It was like 10 grand to buy into it. So I got into that, and just really that why that shaped my legacy so much was because it gave me an outlook on successful people that I had never had. Like it changed my viewpoint of them, because up to this point, I just thought like rich people were like stepping on the little guy, like, rich get richer, poor get poorer type of thing. So when I got around these guys, and being around multi-millionaires and many, many, many millionaires, and being in the rooms with these people, I felt connected with them. They were super down to earth and giving game and stuff like that. So I was just like, what? Like in my line of work, and based off of my history and how I grew up, like anytime somebody helped you, it was like with contingencies, like, hey, you owe me, bro. But it was really where I seen like the go-giver mentality. And at first I thought it was fake. I thought it was like corny, like, man, there's no way some rich dude is just like giving out all this game and helping people. But it was legit. I actually flew down there, met with him, like was at his business, and had a whole bunch of people. I won a sales competition down there, and yeah, so I just fell in love with real estate, and also just giving back. And before that, I'd always looked up to like the gangbangers and the hustlers and the drug dealers and the rappers. But now it gave me something positive that I could look up to. Like, hey, these are rich people that are actually giving back. They're helping people. They're pulling people up. They're bringing people with them. They're teaching. And I already had a passion for like the coaching for like the sports and stuff. So I just used that same exact passion and just merged that into the business world. And I just started just taking action, like learning what they were teaching me and just doing it. And then having that safety net. And I think that's what really kept me from taking a lot of risks before. Is just I didn't have a safety net to say, hey, did I do this right? Or if a problem came up, I didn't have somebody to say, hey, man, like what happened here? Like, what did I do wrong? How can I avoid this next time? So this time I did. When I bought into that mentorship, when I had that community now, I could reach out. I could learn from other people. I could learn from their mistakes, and they could teach me stuff. I could teach them stuff. So I joined a couple teams. I met another great mentor of mine named Sam Singh. Super awesome guy. Like he's helped me so much with mindset. Super smart, like super intellectual guy. The guy used to work for like the FBI or something. Like, the dude's a wit. But he's helped me like so much. Still helps me to this day. Anytime I ask him any kind of questions, he never hesitates to give me an answer, give it to me real, and let me know actionable steps that I could take to really accomplish anything that I'm looking to accomplish. So shout outs to him, shout outs to Pace and the whole Sub 2 community. Like they really helped me and motivated me and pushed me, and just being around the same like-minded individuals and being able to go to meetups and networking events and stuff like that was huge for me, because I never even thought that I can get into rooms with people that had millions of dollars. And now I'm commingling with them and giving advice to millionaires and getting advice from them. It was just like, man, it was a huge mindset shift for me, and it was really what I needed.
Yeah. That's awesome to even have that, like to have that community there for you because it'll help cut a lot of the mistakes so you can avoid certain things because they're there. So, what would you say to someone that is kind of in the similar position that you were in growing up, in and out of trouble, like in and out of jail, getting in trouble, that feels like they're stuck and like they can't, like their past is defining what's going to go on with their future? What's the advice you would give them?
Well, I would say, if you're listening to this and you're at rock bottom, good, because there's only one way to go, and that's up. Just don't play the victim. Don't wait for permission. Do whatever it takes. Apply for the job, enroll in the class, start reading, start listening, avoid the parties, start learning. Trade Netflix for YouTube tutorial videos. Stop messing around, stop scrolling, and start learning. Just kind of mind hacking. Don't binge watch TV shows. Start binge learning. Really, get your skill set up. It's going to be hard, and it's going to suck. But I promise it's going to be worth it. I went from career criminal to creating careers for people, creating opportunities for people. Like, if I could do it, anybody can do it. If you want to get there faster, hire a mentor. Find somebody that's doing what you want to do, living the life that you want to live, having the businesses that you want to create and have for yourself, and pay them. I always joke with people, hey, I pay for friendships. And
Yeah.
it's true, because I want to be friends with successful people. I want to be in those group chats. I want to be talking with them. I want to be in proximity to people that are doing things, the people that are creating the legacies that I want to create as well, and living the life that I want to live.
Yeah. And don't use the excuse they don't have money. Go get the job. Save the money just like Munson did back way when, like
Yep.
he saved his money to get the CDL, So there's like literally no excuse. So what's like your proudest moment of all of this?
Honestly, my proudest moment, it's not even in business, although, like, I've been super blessed and super thankful for all the, success I've had in my businesses. But, it's really being able to give my kids a life that I never had, and vacations and freedom and consistency. And I'm able to be at all their stuff, and I've never missed a game. And I'm at all their things, like cheering them on, getting them all the cool gear and making them feel good, pushing them for something, that I never had, giving them stability, allowing them never to hurt for nothing or worry about the lights getting off. And back in the day, they seen me going through that. So that's the cool thing, is they actually seen the come up. They were with me in that apartment where we didn't have shit.
Right.
And they love me just the same. And so now it just feels so good to really give back and give them the life that they truly deserve. And and just recently, I was able to buy my son a brand new car when he got his license. And that was always a dream for me,
Yeah.
and now I was able to give it to him. So that was super proud moment for me. And everything is around my legacy, and it's around my kids. And I just want to be able to change the trajectory of our family tree. And it starts with me. I'm the one that's going to change it. And, I couldn't be more grateful and blessed to be able to come from what I came from to be where I'm at, and to be able to have the impact that I have on people.
Yeah. And I truly believe you'll be the one.
Absolutely. You
Yeah.
too. You too.
I really believe that. So to most people, they would probably be like, okay, he's made it, like I'm done. I own businesses. I'm successful. Like I got the life I want with my children. But like, what's next for you? What's the next steps? What are the goals?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I got some lofty ones. And so one of my biggest goals is I really want to give back to like the urban city youth. So I would love to like start like a resource center or somewhere that people can come in and live. People that are like living in the hood, and just kind of trapped and prohibited by, their budget. I want to bring them in. I want to give them access to job training, trade school entry, college tuition assistance, tutoring, stuff like that. Give them a safe place to live, that for the people that really want to change and really want to get out of their situation. I also want to start doing public speaking. I want to go speak in the jails and the foster homes and the prisons and stuff like that. Just kind of giving people, some motivation and some inspiration. Like, hey, I was literally sitting in the same seat as you, and I made it out. Rough, man. And,
Yeah.
I think that God pretty much put me through this, and turned my test into my testimony. Like, he put me through these things to prepare me for my entrepreneurial journey. And now I'm able to give back and give insight to people, and hopefully inspire people. And So besides that, my financial goals, I want to be making 100K a month. I'm semi-passively. My true goals are just freedom, financial freedom, lifestyle freedom, location freedom, everything. Like I just want to be free. I want to be able to live the life that I want, travel when I want, live where I want, work if I want, when I want, being able to do everything for my kids, my grandkids, and just live as long as possible.
Is peaceful and exactly how you want to, not being chained to anything, not having to someone to tell you what to do, where to be, how to spend your money. Like can't go here, can't go there, the freedom. That's exactly why we get into all of this.
Exactly. Yeah, money isn't the goal, it's just a tool. Freedom is exactly what I'm shooting for. And that's what I really love about this, having my own business is that I get to make my own schedule. So I get to make all those things. And that is far more important to me than making a whole bunch of money or having big record months. Like all that, come and go. That money can be made up, but the time can't. And I only have a couple years left with my boys where they're actually going to want to hang out with me. It's starting to dwindle already, unfortunately, but
Well, I think
that
they will
sucks.
want to.
Oh yeah. And I want to be able to give them a business, like or create an opportunity where they're able to take over a business or buy a business, so that they can be successful. I don't want them to have to be employees unless that's the journey that they want to take.
Yeah, and I know we talk about that a lot. I love how your boys, we had that conversation last night. You're going to pour into what they want. You're not
Yep.
going to push them down. If they want to be this, you'll 100% pour into that. You're not going to force them to do anything or be who they don't want to be, but you're going to pour into that. And I think that's, what I love most about you is the way you view your children and the way you pour into them for their dreams, not yours.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I truly just want to see him win. Like my youngest son, he wants to be an athlete and go D1 and maybe NFL if it all works out. And so I'm just pushing and helping him get there, putting him in opportunities and working on the training, building his mindset, locking in on his macros and stuff like that. Just
Yeah.
letting him know the things that they don't teach in school that could help him get there. My oldest son, on the other hand, very talented as well. But he doesn't like school, very much like me. And so he doesn't want to go to school afterwards. So he doesn't want to go to college. He just wants to get to work, and he said that he wanted to get into sales. So we do like role playing and I give him access to my mentorships and, kind of hack his Instagram and his TikTok to kind of hack the algorithm. I know we were talking about that a little bit. And,
Yeah.
I just want to see my boys be successful. So whatever that version of success looks like for them, I'm all for it. And I'm going to be the biggest cheerleader. I'm going to be right there cheering them on, helping them out, using all the resources that I've been able to accumulate over the years to really give them that push. Because who knows, if somebody would have been behind me, believing in me, like investing in me, like really pushing me, man, I probably could have done some cool, epic stuff, and
Yeah.
and I feel like I've came a long way, but I could have been so much further if I would have really had the right guidance and the right people in my life. So instead of worrying about if my kids are going to have someone or meet like someone that one, I just wanted to create that person and become that person. So, um, my first goal is to inspire my own children, and then after that, I want to inspire everyone else's.
Yeah. And you definitely do.
Off.
Well, thank you, Matt, for sharing all that real raw. I'm sure it wasn't always as easy to share that part of you. I learned a lot on this episode. Didn't know a lot of the things that you had been through. And I think the biggest thing to take away from all of this is what you went through in your past does not define your future. No matter how hard your back is up against that wall, like you can still push through. You can literally do anything you put your mind to. You didn't have the best life growing up, although your parents gave you, the best life that they could. You didn't come from money. You didn't come from some, wonderful school. You didn't have all these skills. If anything, you were like we joke about a bad criminal.
Right. Oh, horrible.
And you didn't use any like literally time after time like you know walls came up, right? And roadblocks and fires, like we like to call them now. Like you got to put out a fire and move on. Like I love that so much about you is how strong you are to get past that and not let that define who you are. Because I see that a lot with people. They use your story as their excuse as to why they keep making shitty mistakes. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. I know it will inspire people, and I'm excited to see you like just grow from here.
Yeah, and that's the most exciting thing is that I'm just getting started. So like I've been through so much, but it's just like a book. I just think I'm really getting started, and by the grace of God, I hope I got many, many more decades to go. And I'm just going to continue to do great things, and not just for myself, but for others, right? Because, when I get more successful, there's only so much money I can spend. And I really want to share that and be able to give back to people. So that's a big mission of mine as well. So I can't do that broke. So I got to keep getting money. I got to keep finding opportunities. I got to keep leveling up so that my reach and the impact that I have can be widespread and not so limited.
Right.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks again for letting me share my story. I hope it did inspire somebody. I really hope that, somebody could take this story and really, gain some motivation and some clarity around their life and just never give up. And, if you don't take anything from this, just don't give up. There's going to be so many roadblocks, but the way that I look at it is that that's just your test. Like, how bad do you want this? Are you willing to get through whatever roadblock that is put in front of you? Any kind of speed bump that's in front of you? Are you willing to work through that? Or are you only going to commit to this if it's easy? And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've been able to be. I was really resilient. I was forced to learn how to survive and depend on myself. My mindset is totally, completely changed from like who I used to be. I used to have a negative mindset. I always used to think about things negative. I used to just always complain and stuff like that. Once I switch my mindset and started operating in an attitude of gratitude and waking up just being extremely grateful for just not only just waking up, but for all the things that I've been put through, where I'm at, how patient God has been with me. I'm just super grateful, super thankful for where I'm at, what I've accomplished. And I can't wait to see what I accomplish either.
I can't wait to see it. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what? If this episode hits you and it sparks something inside of you, man, I'd love to hear about it. So please share it, tag me, leave a review. We're on Spotify now and YouTube, so please give us some love over there. Subscribe because you never know who's listening, and who's one decision away from changing everything. So this is just the beginning, and I just hope you guys continue to learn, invest in yourself, build that cash flow, protect your peace. Well, I hope you guys really like this episode. I know I dove deep into the nitty gritty, man, and just gave it to you raw and real. And if you like that, you're really gonna love what we got in store for you next time, where we're gonna be deep diving into your story, Mary Jean. So I'm
Yeah.
excited about that one because I'm sure there's so much that I don't know about you and that the viewers don't know about you. So I'm excited to learn more about you and where you've been, what you've overcome, and to where you're at now.
Yes, I'm excited to share it with you guys for sure. A little nervous, a little out of my comfort zone, but we'll catch you on the next episode.